Elves in the War of the Ring. Many notable elves are involved in the War of the Ring, such as Legolas, Elrond, and Galadriel, but all of them have complicated histories and lineage. What was the context of their involvement in the war? How do they influence the events in this major conflict? Hello and welcome back to another video from Secrets of the Rings, where we celebrate and delve deep into all things Tolkien. Join us today as we explore the state of the elves during the War of the Ring, who they were, where they were, and how they affected the events of the Lord of the Rings. If you enjoy our videos, please like and subscribe for more content, and let us know what you would like to see more of. The War of the Ring officially began in 3017 of the Third Age, but much took place before then that set the conflict in motion. Although the war had much more significant implications on the race of men, Sauron's first battles with the elves began shortly after the Awakening, at Cuiviénen, in 1050 of the Year of the Trees. Sauron was a servant of Morgoth, who ever sought the corruption of Ilúvatar's creations, and would aid in those attempts throughout the First Age upon the Noldor's return to Middle-earth. Morgoth's defeat, however, would conclude the First Age, leaving Sauron to repent in fear before retreating into isolation for 500 years. During the Second Age, elven civilization in Middle-earth was marked by the establishment of the Magnificent Realms. By 750 Second Age, many Noldor had settled in Lindon, the sole surviving land of Beleriand, ruled by High King Gil-galad. Celebrimbor, grandson of the mighty Feanor, led a group from Lindon to found Eregion, just west of Moria, where Mithril had been discovered. There was formed the Gwaith y Myrdain, a brotherhood of jewelsmiths, whose creations rivaled in splendor those of Feanor. Sauron had begun to construct Barad-dûr, and made attempts to sabotage all things elven. Under the fair guise of Annatar, he was still unable to penetrate Lindon due to Gil-galad's suspicion. However, he had deceived Celebrimbor in Eregion, proving to be a master smith, and leading to the creation of the Rings of Power, including the three elven rings, Nenya, Narya, and Vilya, the Rings of Water, Fire, and Air. In 1600 of the Second Age, Sauron forged the One Ring, his masterwork, alone in the heart of Mount Doom. This ring stood alone amongst the others, possessing Sauron's wickedness and desire for domination. As Sauron donned the One Ring for the first time, those elves who wore the others were immediately made aware of his presence. The elves were not so lightly to be caught. As soon as Sauron set the One Ring upon his finger, they were aware of him, and they knew him, and perceived that he would be master of them, and of all that they wrought. Then, in anger and fear, they took off their rings. J.R.R. Tolkien, The Silmarillion. They would refrain from wearing them while Sauron possessed his ring, rejecting his influence and the utility of the rings. His long-term plan of controlling the elves had failed, sparking the War of the Elves and Sauron. Sauron sought to reclaim and redistribute all of the rings the elves possessed, leading to the War of the Elves and Sauron in 1693 of the Second Age. The conflict would result in the destruction of Eregion and the death of Celebrimbor, who had refused to give up the 3 elven rings after yielding the 9 destined for men and the 7 destined for dwarves. The 3 rings were secretly possessed by Gil-galad, Círdan, and Galadriel. Additionally, the elves were scattered after Sauron's invasion. Some escaped north with Elrond, who would then establish Imladris, Second Age 1697, also known as Rivendell. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm were critical in distracting Sauron's forces, along with King Amroth of Lorinand and his forces of Galadrim, while those elves fled. Some elves were given safe passage through the doors of Durin to then inhabit the woods of Lorien, the last time anyone would pass through until the Fellowship thousands of years later. This war concluded in Second Age 1700, when the Númenóreans relieved Eriador of Sauron's forces. By then, Lindon and Imladris had remained as the major elven cities. The very first version of the White Council was held in 1701 to strategize and discuss the direction of the West. Members are not stated in the record, but Gil-galad, Elrond, Galadriel, and Celeborn all remain possible members. The conclusion of the first meeting saw Vilya, the Ring of Air, to Elrond, who would also lead the newest official stronghold for the elves in Imladris. In 3261 of the Second Age, Sauron waged war against the Númenóreans after they had foiled his efforts at the Battle of Gwathlo many years earlier. He staged his own capture and infiltrated the highest ranks of Númenor, sowing the seeds of its eventual destruction from the inside, even giving cause to a visit from Eru Ilúvatar, the creator of everything. Sauron could no longer wear his fair form to deceive the elves, having drowned in the fall of Númenor and recovering solely by his spirit. He spent time in Barad-dûr, regaining his terrible physical form, bound by the One Ring. Meanwhile, Elendil and his sons founded the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor in the west of Middle-earth. Unaware of Sauron's survival, they were caught off guard when Sauron attacked Minas Ithil in Second Age 3429 and burned the White Tree of Gondor. This event prompted the formation of the last alliance of elves and men, uniting Gil-galad and Elendil against the Dark Lord in attempts to banish him for good. They spent some years in Imladris, making plans and forging weapons before moving south, gathering leaders such as King Orofer of Greenwood the Great, his son Thranduil, and King Amdir of Lorien. The last alliance confronted Sauron, culminating in the Battle of Dagorlad and the Siege of Barad-dûr, lasting from Second Age 3434 to 3441. Sauron was defeated when Isildur cut the One Ring from his finger, leading eventually to his own demise and the disappearance of the ring. Gil-galad had perished, and Thranduil returned to Greenwood with what remained of the Sylvan army. The Third Age followed that mighty battle, and Sauron spent many years regaining his strength, while some of his forces toiled with the kingdoms of men. The elves were split into a number of different strongholds. In the west, Lindon remained under the rule of Círdan, while Elrond remained at Imladris. Both leaders, along with the Galadrim, aided Arnor against the forces of Angmar throughout the early stages of the Third Age. Celeborn and Galadriel, Lord and Lady of Lothlorien, fortified their woodland realm. The Greenwood, however, saw a darkness take over their forest. A mysterious force, known as the Necromancer, constructed Dol Guldur where Aman Lanc once stood, and from there spread a shadow across the forest. It was given the name Mirkwood, the Mannish translation of Taur Nufuin, or Forest Under Nightshade, which was the same name given to Dorthonion, where Sauron dwelt in the First Age. It was also called the Forest of Great Fear, Taur Idnedalos. Elves as a race were in decline by the Third Age, both in terms of their numbers and their influence on the world. Many of the great realms of the past had diminished or been destroyed entirely. The majority of elves remaining in Middle-earth by then were those of the Sindar, Sylvan, and Noldorin descent. The Noldor were the most prominent, such as Elrond or Galadriel. The Sylvan elves lived primarily in the forests of Lothlorien and Mirkwood, maintaining a more secluded existence. Throughout this age, many elves felt a growing weariness in Middle-earth and longed for the undying lands in the west. This sentiment, known as the waning of the elves, contributed to their gradual departure from Middle-earth.